Joining me right now is former Israeli Prime Minister and author of the new memoir, My Country, My Life, Fighting for Israel, Searching for Peace. Ehud Barak is joining us. Mr. Prime Minister, thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
It's very good to see you this morning. Obviously, Palestinian leaders have been warning that this embassy move would hurt peace efforts. Where do those peace efforts stand today?
Oh, the peace efforts are not exactly on the table. It might take time. We have to see the president's plan and then to wait for the responses of both sides. But the events were planned in advance for some 6 weeks and probably would have happened anyhow because of the 15th of May, which is the celebration of the establishment of Israel and what the Palestinians called their disaster. And it would have been anyhow on May 15.
Why was the opening of the embassy in Jerusalem so important?
It's important for Israel for the apparent reasons that's our capital. I would have expected it to happen 70 years ago when America recognized Israel, or at least 25 years ago when the Congress passed a bipartisan resolution to do it. We all welcome, all Israelis welcome the decision of President Trump to put it into action, to take it from the shelves where it was delayed 100 times and now make it. So it's important. We expect others to follow. And in fact, it doesn't exclude the possibility that once there is a Palestinian state, as a result of the readiness to take some painful decisions, American embassy will appear on their capital. It doesn't exclude anything.
Right. That's a good point to make. Let me ask you about the Iran nuclear deal, because amazingly, the embassy opens just a few days after the President Trump, decides to pull out of the Iran deal. Iran's President Hassan Rouhani is now asking the European Union to take a stand against what he is calling the, quote, illegal and illogical action of the United States pulling out of the deal. Rouhani said that Tehran will only remain in the deal if it truly benefits from the accord. Your take on the U.S. pulling out of that deal?
You know, I saw the deal is a bad deal, but once President Obama decided on it, it became part of reality. The same applies here. I think that there were other ways to deal with the fact that Iran keep developing missiles, sowing terror all around the area, or running insurgencies into neighbors' places. But these are all issues which are out of the deal. So America could sit down with the Europeans and try to think what to do, including Russia probably. But once Trump already pulled out of the deal, that's a new reality. You have to think what might follow. I noticed that the Russians and the Europeans are ready now to consider certain modifications in the deal in order to make Iran staying and make America more satisfied. I don't know whether it will work. Only time will tell. But the Iranians, the only positive result, immediate result of this somewhat arbitrary decision of the American president is that the Iranians are being made more cautious. They are really frightened by the total unpredictability of the president and the administration, and prefer, once it was became clear that he's out, to be more cautious, more calculated.
Which is a good thing.
Which is a good thing.
You want to see.
In a way, that's what happened in North Korea. The North Korean chose to warm up the relationship with the South exactly for the same reason. He was worried that something will come out of this unpredictability that might cost him more.
So they're worried that Donald Trump is unpredictable and they don't know what he's going to do next.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a positive.
Yeah, that's a positive.
But
in
you
the
were
short
expecting
term. You don't know where it laid in the long term. That's much more complicated.
You were expecting protests and upset at the Gaza border.
Yeah,
and that's what we got.
We expected it. We have very little choices, you should understand. We all have riot control means to control several hundreds people from 15 yards, but we don't have riot control means to control thousands of people from 500 yards. And Israel cannot afford these activists to cross the border, not just on principle because that's a border, and especially those of us who believe in two-state solution and in borders should make sure that borders are well, but also because the infrastructure. You could see behind the back of your reporter that few hundred yards from the fence there are civilian activity that we have responsibility to protect at almost any price.
What do you think should be next? You know, the criticism, those skeptics who didn't want the embassy move, didn't want the U.S. to pull out of the deal, say, what's the plan B? How do you deal with Iran on a long-term basis? I mean, you know, what do you make of this relationship between President Trump and your current Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, and what the plan is? Do they have a plan in terms of Iran later?
I know the Iranians are suspicious that nowadays, once Trump is out of the deal, the administration, with Pompeo on one side, and Bolton on the other side, is ready to use the slightest mistake of Iran in order to hit its nuclear facilities. So that's part of the positive side because they behave more cautiously. But you cannot know how it will continue. I saw that the deal, as it were deployed, would ensure us for the next several years. I would expect our Prime Minister and President Trump to sit behind closed door and make sure that we invest enough intelligence resources to know what the Iranians are doing, that we define together what is a breakout, and we decide together what should bring the surgical military operation back to the table by Israel or by America. These are much more important elements than any kind of fireworks.
Why would President Obama do this deal if it was so bad?
I think that he genuinely believed that after 12 years of trying to suppress Iran, and in spite of many operations that were taken, clandestine operations and others, to slow them down, the fact that they continued and came so close to reaching a nuclear capability, that probably the time had come to change it from perceiving Iran as the a part of the problem and transforming them into public part of the solution.
Yeah.
But that hardly worked because the Iranians showed to be insisting on keep kind of insurgencies around the world.
Right, and they're still
waiting patiently for opportunity.
And they're still chanting death to America, death to Israel.
Yeah.
Mr. Prime Minister, good to see you. Thank you. Ehud Barak.